Okay, we are we're live.
Excellent.
How about that?
Here we are.
All right, here we go. So welcome back to Alliance Aces. Let me turn my mic the right way. We are excited today to be joined in the WorkSpan offices by Matt Gale, Director of Strategic Alliances, Go-to-Market and Strategic Alliances.
Yes, sir.
Right? Okay. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, and Jason Boggs, also Director of Cloud Alliances for both with NTT Data.
That's correct.
So yeah, thank you guys for joining us today.
It's good to be here.
Good. So I thought we could just maybe start with a little bit of I'll kind of talk to each of you about what you guys are working on in your teams, and love to hear what's happening. We love. On Alliance Aces, our audience is all Alliance professionals, so they love to hear just what's working, what are some challenges, how you've overcome them, and those kinds of things. So, Matt, maybe we could start with you.
Sure. So I think for us, I've run the alliance with Salesforce.com and the broader Salesforce.com ecosystem. So when you look at a Salesforce.com year over year, they're growing at a 30% clip. As a systems integrator like NTT Data, we look at that and think the obvious, we should be growing at a commensurate clip, at least 30%. Yeah. We haven't been, right? So as an alliance person, I look at that and think, okay, what do I have to fix to get us in line with that growth pattern? So that's where my focus has been, and that's what ultimately led me to WorkSpan.
Wow. So what? How are you going to? That's a big challenge, right?
It's a huge challenge. Yeah. It's there's that old saw that strategic. The problem with strategic partnerships is that they're rarely strategic and never partnerships. So,
okay, I guess I've heard that one before.
Yeah, it's an old, or maybe I made it up. I can't remember. But the point being is that we tend to live in these bifurcated worlds of strategy, and then what we're doing on a day-to-day basis in the alliance world. Yeah. And the challenge, I think, is tying our operational and our tactical stuff to actually making our strategy a reality. The strategy is all good; it makes sense, but how do we do that on a day-to-day basis? How do we, drive lead flow? How do we joint market? How do we develop solutions together? Those kind of things. Again, at the strategic level, spoken about frequently, but tactically rarely executed. And it comes, and I think a lot of that, at least in the Salesforce ecosystem, and I'm sure that Jason will share the same, is that it's, day to day, you kind of lose sight of the strategic. So again, for us, or at least for me personally, a tool like WorkSpan allows me to have that insight into what are we actually doing, right? I can't answer that, without WorkSpan. What are we actually? I have say a dozen alliance partners who all use different spreadsheets, who all I have different cadence calls with them. I have a different mix of people with them. Everything is different, and WorkSpan allows me to kind of abstract that to understand and get some insight to make sure that I'm driving the strategy that my bosses want me to drive. So
to operationalize some of that stuff, right? Turn it into reality. That's great.
Yeah. Thank you.
So Jason, how about you? What partnerships are you running, and how are you?
So I manage our cloud alliances and our cloud native alliances, and we're kind of to a point where one person or even a group of people are not able to keep up with what one hyperscale provider can do for us from a partnership perspective. So, there's incentive plans, there's money that's left on the table on a quarterly basis. There are just many opportunities that we're not seeing because a process, really. I mean, it's very interesting to understand how WorkSpan is helping, with the joint solutions, the joint marketing, the joint sales, and so forth. So yeah, we're excited. We just have gone from just managing kind of on the fly in an ad hoc manner, to being able to actually have a well-defined process and have good KPIs and metrics out of that. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's great. It's always a challenge, right? Sort of getting everybody on the same page and making sure that you're hitting your KPIs, right?
That's right. Yeah, and I mean, one of the things that's really kind of frustrating for me, and it's probably for you as well. My boss asked me a couple of days ago, we were trying to do some investment planning, and he said, well, what is your influence revenue for Partner X? And I couldn't give him an answer because we just don't have that kind of information right now. So, yeah.
Or if you do, it's a couple of weeks of like pulling things, right? And then it's out of date right away.
Yeah. By the time we got it, it would be out of date. Exactly. Yeah. So.
Well, so tell me, so Matt, we were talking a little bit beforehand, and you've had some experiences before NTT. I think you were with IBM, and tell me about just broadly working with as an alliance leader. What are some things that you picked up along the way that you could share with our audience?
It's got kind of a two-part answer.
Yeah.
I think the first part of that answer is that 70% of all alliances fail.
It's a staggering statistic.
It's amazing.
Isn't that crazy?
And alliances are absolutely essential to the modern world, the world we live in, the technology, the rate of growth that we're experiencing. Alliances are absolutely essential, strategically speaking. Whether that you're looking at a joint venture or you're looking at just a limited type of alliance, that's where the world's going. And I think to date it hasn't gotten enough focus in the C-suite. It's kind of this thing that sits over there. And I don't know, Jason, if you've kind of felt that way over the years. And typically corporations will go through this, we like alliance people, we don't like alliance people. So they go through this hire and fire kind of thing, and kind of becomes a pseudo marketing function for a while, and then it goes back into a business function. So and I think that's where, for me, both professionally and when I look at the industry, regardless of the industry, manufacturing, just as essential as it is in technology from an alliance perspective, that alliances be given the credence that it's due, but it's incumbent on us as alliance people to make sure that we're measured, we're providing the data that the C-suite needs, we're tied directly to strategy, we are measuring every single day. When we're asked a question like what's influenced ACV or whatever the case may be, we can answer that off the drop of a dime. Right. We can't do that today. Right. And again, that's where I come back to a tool like WorkSpan will dramatically help us get that much closer to Alliance Nirvana, if I can go that far. And so I'm super excited about what the path holds for our company.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Jason, any thoughts from your...
I've been in alliances now for a couple of years. Most of my time in the industry was in delivery. I started off as a DBA, and then I went into DBA leadership. And what I found really interesting...
So you're a data guy.
I'm a data guy. Yeah, absolutely. What was really interesting is that we had systems in place for delivery. We had a DBA team, and we were able to communicate with the Unix team, the Windows team, the network team. We had this whole ecosystem of delivery organizations, even though they were managed by different people. We all had the same process. We all had the same KPIs and metrics. We were able to find out what those were. When I came over into alliances, I started asking the question, well, what do we use? What's our system record? And I never got an answer.
Silly you.
Yeah, exactly. So, we resorted to, spreadsheets and SharePoint and email and everything else. And
which is what everyone does these days.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's kind of so I was just a little bit dumbfounded that we have all these high-tech systems and service management, and even the sales teams have SFDC, but alliances didn't have anything. So that's what kind of led me to start looking into, is there some alternative out there that we can employ to make this better? Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So, where are you guys? You guys are based. Where are you based?
I'm in LA.
In LA.
Yeah.
I'm in Phoenix.
In Phoenix. Okay.
Or wherever the airplane is. Yeah, that's right.
So yeah. So where do you see the growth areas for alliances for NTT in the coming 2 or 3 years, say?
That's a great question. I think for us, it's in the space of technology stacks that address industry-specific challenges. Good example of that is our insurance digital platform at NTT Data. Foundation of that is Salesforce.com. 5 different technologies, right? So we run it, we manage it, we own the licenses, we basically lease the licenses to the client, and when they're when they need to grow, expand, or contract, they're not hamstrung with all the licensing issues. They're not negotiating licensing with 6 different vendors. So I think for us, that's and that's really what triggered my searching for something like WorkSpan. Little did I know that Jason was already the tip of the spear and had already talked to you guys. So we kind of intersected it a little later and found out, hey, there is this tool, right? Because I'm dealing with 6 different partners, 6 different licensing models, 6 different cost structures with 20 different prospects and 3 different clients. So I needed some way to manage that day to day to to operationalize it and give visibility, because up to that point in time I couldn't say IDP is running at this rate, right? We're selling this much. Because it was so, even in our SFDC from a sales perspective, you would see the sales registered, but there wasn't this comprehensive view of what this offering was generating from a revenue perspective or growth perspective. So I think for at least in my part of the world, that's really where our focus is going to be here in the next couple of years.
Those industry solutions
solving industry solutions, regardless of what's behind, and our clients are really asking for that across manufacturing, CPG, and retail. They're wanting, okay, we want you guys to do this. We want 1 invoice a month. Help me figure that out. And that again is where a tool like WorkSpan comes in, so we can see across the breadth of these different the vendors in the stack and make sure that we're managing them effectively and profitably.
Oh, that's great. Jason, how about in the hyperscale with hyperscale partners?
Yeah, I think hyperscale is really it's already taking off, and obviously we have a large book of business now. We were predominantly an outsourcing company with Dell Services and with Perot Systems. So we have all these legacy customers that have been around for, we've had them since the Perot days. They've been 20, 25-year customers. And we're starting to see some of them go to other partners because they have been able to figure out how to innovate and move their workloads out of a legacy model and move them, into hyperscale. And so we're finally realizing that we really need to invest in figuring out how to move these customers into the new age, the modern hyperscale cloud, cloud native platforms like Pivotal and things like that. So that's where we're placing our bets right now is really apps modernization, cloud modernization. That's where we see the revenue coming from over the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, and so you have a lot of your customers then you're providing the services to bring them up to.
That's right. Yeah, we have cloud advisory services. We have a whole professional services team that can come in and move you from point A to point B into the cloud. We've even done it for mainframes. So we had a recent win with a large soft drink company, which I can't name, but we moved their mainframe, and some of the technology and some of the code in that system was over 50 years old when we moved.
Wow.
And now it's all in a hyperscale provider. Wow. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's so. And are you also, Matt? You talked about industry solutions, some sort of predefined solutions that you're working on with partners. Is that a similar approach with hyperscale partners, or are you?
It is. I mean, we have a really strong horizontal type of offering for managed services and managed security services. Hosting some of our larger ERPs on public cloud, that seems to be where it's at.
And do you do then also hybrid solutions also cloud?
Yeah, we do. We have a private cloud, and there's a lot of customers that are kind of looking at that, and it's kind of interesting that all three of the hyperscale providers now have a hybrid solution. So it's I think they're seeing that there's still a need in the market for that. Yeah.
I really like your line of questioning, Chip, because it brings up a good point that I didn't know Jason existed 6 months ago. Right? I had no idea who it was. Yeah. We work for the same company. Our paychecks come from the same place. Yep. I didn't know he existed until I started looking for WorkSpan. And then Sterling Augusta, your sales rep, let me know that, hey, I'm already talking to this guy named Jason Boggs. Do you know him? I said, nope, I have no idea. my point being is that healthcare is another huge target for us in our Salesforce.com practice, specifically health plans. And I'm sure that's, at the top of your radar as well.
Right.
So, just even the idea of how do alliances work and then how do alliances work together allows us to, I can go in. So there's some big data problem. Jason will talk about COBOL if you want, I'm sure, for like half an hour.
Are you going to take that, Jason?
Some old, some legacy system kind of thing. But we can intersect on these problems where sometimes we do it by happenstance, right? We just kind of find, hey, they said this is the thing. Who does that thing? Right? But now Jason and I know each other. So conversely, Jason can, go into and say, hey, this looks like a perfect Salesforce.com use case. Can you step in, bring somebody in and do this?
Yeah. Yes. So even connecting, not even just with your partners, but internally.
We work for a $115 billion, I forget what the number is.
Big.
It's a massive global company, right? And, so sometimes you don't always know who's doing what. Right. And then all of a sudden, your eyes are opened. And that's where I think alliances really drives value. That's the key message for me is, and what I'm trying to abide by is we actually drive value. We drive revenue. We drive the relationships until they're no longer relationships. That's the other part of it as well. It's like sometimes you got to kill a thing, right? It's just not profitable for either party. You got to do this, but you can't do that unless you have the insight and the metrics to really understand what's going on.
Yeah, I think that's something that we've seen also is just that, with the market's so competitive these days, right? So your customers are driving everything, right? The power shift is really move to customers, and they're demanding. They can go right next door. They can, so you have to be agile and have new solutions, and you're not always going to go create something. You need to be able to find a partner where you can put a joint solution together and bring it to market quickly.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting point because historically, because I've come out of the system integration industry, I started off at Perot and then, Dell Services, now NTT Data. Back in the Perot days, we built everything ourselves. We didn't need partners. I mean, we used vendors for licensing and things like that, but we really didn't have this whole concept of partnering and going to market together with another company. That was just like unheard of, even 5 years ago. And now our leadership is starting to see that, partners are really, if we didn't have partners, we wouldn't be in business at this point. So.
Really imperative. It's going back to your original point, I think, around just it's strategic, right? It's a strategic imperative.
Yeah.
Good. Well, this has been great. Thank you guys for stopping by the WorkSpan office this afternoon and just having a little chat. I know our audience will really appreciate your thoughts and ideas around some of the things that have been successful for both of you, and so that's great. I think Matt, Jason, thank you for joining us, and with that, we'll sign off here and say for Alliance Aces, Chip Rodgers, and thank you for joining, and we'll see you again next time.
See you then.
See you. Thanks, Chip.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.